It was late afternoon at the art studio, the kind of quiet where you could hear the dust in the air. She stood by the window, her profile framed by the dull orange of the setting sun. A strand of hair had slipped from her bun, brushing against her neck as she leaned over a canvas that wasn't hers. I'd stayed after class to clean brushes. I wasn't supposed to talk to her, she wasn't my teacher, just another student, older, self-contained, with a grace that made the room feel smaller when she was in it. She painted like she was remembering something painful, and I watched her like I was trying to learn what that felt like. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, unhurried. "Do you ever clean them this carefully for yourself?" I froze, a brush dripping turpentine between my fingers. Not really." She smiled faintly. "Didn't think so." Her humor was quiet, but it carried warmth, like someone testing the temperature of water before stepping in. I laughed under my breath, and she turned back to her painting, the corner of her mouth lifting just slightly. The studio light flickered once before settling, and I noticed her dress, pale gray, loose at the shoulders. When she reached forward to adjust the easel, one strap slipped down, grazing the top of her arm. She noticed, I could tell. Her fingers hesitated, but she didn't fix it. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. That small, deliberate nothingness, it lingered between us, like the moment had been left open for me to step into, and I didn't. I just stood there, holding a brush I'd forgotten to rinse, watching the way the light touched her skin. "You're staring," she said quietly, still not turning around. My heart skipped. "Sorry." "I didn't, it's fine," she interrupted, her tone unreadable. "You're just curious." She finally looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes weren't soft, they were tired, aware. The kind of gaze that comes from years of trying not to be seen, then being caught anyway. "Curious," I repeated, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. "Curious can be dangerous," she said. "Especially around people who should know better." "I'm 24, I said before I could stop myself. That made her smile, a small, knowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And I'm old enough to know that age doesn't make it easier." The air between us felt heavier. She turned back to the window, the sun now half gone, the city outside reduced to silhouettes and headlights. For a few moments neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft rhythm of the brush in her hand, dragging across the canvas. Then she said, without looking at me, "Do you ever paint people or just things?" "People," I said. "But not real ones." Her brush stopped mid-stroke. "Then maybe it's time you tried." I didn't know what she meant, not fully, but I nodded. Something in her tone made it impossible to refuse. She turned slightly, her shoulder bare where the dress had slipped. "Then start with me." I blinked. "Now?" She finally faced me again, a trace of something bold flickering beneath the calm surface. "If not now, when?" The air crackled, not loud, not dramatic, just full. I reached for my sketchbook, fingers trembling slightly. She stood still, the soft light catching the edge of her jaw, her pulse visible just beneath her skin. And then, before I could draw the first line, her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She looked down at the screen, the color draining from her face. Her smile vanished. She whispered, almost to herself, "He shouldn't be calling me." The brush rolled from her hand, hitting the floor. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one keeping a secret. The next day, I came early, earlier than usual. The studio was half-lit, the smell of oil paint and turpentine clinging to the air. She was already there, standing by the window again, this time with her phone turned face down on the table. She didn't greet me right away. Just a faint nod, distant, but not cold. Her movements were quieter than before, more careful, like someone trying to hold something fragile inside. I wanted to ask about the call. I didn't. Instead, I said, "You left this." I held up her forgotten brush from yesterday. She looked at it for a long moment before taking it from my hand. "Thank you?" Her fingers brushed mine. Just once. It was nothing. But it was enough to wake up everything I'd been trying to keep still. Her name was Elena. She told me that later, when we started talking between silences. She used to work in publishing. Married once, long ago. It didn't end badly, she said. It just ended. When she said it, she smiled, but her eyes flickered to the window, the same way someone looks when they're remembering something they'd rather not feel again. And me, I told her I was a design student. That I'd taken the art course just to escape my own head for a while. Escape what? She asked. Expectation, I said, surprising myself. Her lips parted slightly, then curved into something like understanding. That never really goes away, she murmured. We painted side by side that evening. The room dimmed as the sun sank. My focus blurred between the lines of my sketch and the curve of her neck, the soft pulse there. Every time she shifted, the fabric of her dress whispered. That sound alone was enough to pull me off balance. At one point I caught her watching me sketch her reflection on the glass. She didn't stop me. Do you always draw what you shouldn't? She asked. I exhaled. Only when I can't help it. Her eyes softened. Then you'll make a good artist, and a terrible secret keeper. The truth hung there, too close, too raw. When the clock struck 9, the rest of the class had long gone. She packed slowly, deliberate. I helped without asking. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was charged, alive with everything neither of us said. Outside, the hallway lights flickered out one by one. I walked her to the parking lot, the cold night air wrapping around us. She stopped beside her car, keys in hand, but didn't unlock it. You shouldn't wait for me like this, she said quietly. I wasn't waiting, I lied. Yes, you were. Her gaze lingered on me, tracing something she was trying not to acknowledge. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out, her hand resting briefly against my chest, over my heartbeat. Too fast, she whispered, half smiling. Slow down. Before I could answer, she stepped back, opened her car door, and got in. The headlights flared to life, but before driving off, she rolled the window down just enough to say, You'll be here tomorrow? Always. She didn't smile this time. Just nodded, as if that answer scared her more than it should have. The taillights faded into the night, leaving me standing there, paint still on my hands, realizing that what had started as a sketch was slowly turning into something I could never erase. You said I didn't see her for 3 days. The studio felt hollow without her, same light, same smell, but no heartbeat in it. I told myself it didn't matter, that she probably just needed space. But when she finally walked in on the 4th evening, I felt something unclench inside me that I hadn't realized was holding tight. She looked different, more guarded, like she'd built a wall overnight. Missed a few classes, I said, pretending to sound casual. Life caught up, she replied. Her tone was polite, distant. She didn't mention the way she touched me that night, or how her voice had softened when she said slow down. I wanted to ask where she'd been, but something in her eyes told me not to. So we painted. Side by side. In silence. But silence has a way of becoming its own language, full sentences hiding in the spaces between brushstrokes. Halfway through class, a man appeared at the door. He was tall, mid-40s, expensive suit. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a paint-stained room. Elena, he said, his voice firm, too familiar. She froze. Just for a second, but I noticed. I didn't know you'd be here, she said, her tone tight. I texted, he replied, glancing at her phone on the table. You didn't answer. He looked at me next. Not long, just enough to measure, to categorize. Student? I nodded before she could answer. Yes, ma'am, student. The corner of his mouth lifted, but it wasn't a smile. Well, he said, I'll wait outside. He turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. She didn't move for a while. Then she exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. My ex-husband, she said quietly. He doesn't know how to stop checking if I'm okay. Are you? I asked. Her eyes flicked to mine, tired, beautiful, uncertain. Not really. When class ended, she stayed behind again. The hallway was empty, lights dimmed. I helped her clean up, our hands brushing over the same jar of water. This time she didn't pull away. Why do you keep helping me? She asked softly. Because you don't ask anyone to, I said. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it, the pull neither of us could name. The age gap, the wrongness, the way everything about it should have stopped us. But she didn't move back. Neither did I. Her voice broke the silence, low, trembling. You shouldn't look at me like that. How should I? Like I'm still someone you could save. For a moment, we stood too close. The air thickened, her perfume faint under the smell of turpentine. My fingers twitched, wanting to touch her, to trace the line of her jaw, to prove this wasn't just in my head. Then the door creaked open. It was my roommate, arms crossed, smirking. Didn't know you were still here, man. Thought you'd left with everyone else. I stepped back instantly. Elena's composure snapped into place like glass reforming. Good night, she said quickly, collecting her things. I wanted to stop her, but my throat closed up. She walked past me without another word, her shoulder brushing mine. That one touch felt louder than the door slamming behind her. When I finally looked out the window, she was sitting in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes closed. Not leaving. Not ready to. Neither was I. It rained that evening, the kind of slow, steady rain that made the city feel quieter, smaller. I almost didn't go to class. But I did. She wasn't there when I arrived. The easel beside mine stood empty, her brushes missing, her name card gone. A part of me already knew she wouldn't come back. But an hour in, just as I was about to pack up, the door opened. She walked in, soaked, hair dripping, rain staining her sleeves. Her eyes found mine instantly, like she'd come back for a reason she couldn't say out loud. You shouldn't be here, I whispered when she reached me. She laughed softly, bitterly. You sound like me. She didn't paint that night. Just stood beside me, watching my unfinished sketch, the one of her reflection from weeks ago. You kept it, she murmured. I couldn't throw it away. Her fingers brushed the corner of the page, smudging the charcoal. You shouldn't keep pieces of people who can't stay. Then stop making me want to. That broke her stillness. Her eyes lifted to mine, full of things I wasn't supposed to see, the longing she hid behind poise, the loneliness that never left her shoulders. Elena, I breathed. Tell me to stop. She didn't. When the class emptied, we stayed behind again, the last two ghosts in the room. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the window like it was urging us towards something inevitable. Finally, she said, He's coming back. Who? My ex-husband. Her voice cracked. He wants to try again. The words hit me harder than I expected. And you? I don't know. I stepped closer. Then why are you telling me? Because it's not fair, she whispered. To you. To him. To me. I laughed quietly, but it came out broken. So what was all this then? Just paint and silence? Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound smaller than it was. The storm outside roared, thunder rolling like an echo of what neither of us wanted to admit. I took a step closer, then another. You think I haven't tried to forget you? She said, trembling now. You think I don't wake up some mornings hoping this never started? Then why come back? Her breath hitched. Because I can't stop. That was it. The breaking point. Her voice dropped, raw, stripped of every wall she'd built. You make me feel young again, and that terrifies me. I didn't say anything. Words would have ruined it. Instead, I reached up and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. Her eyes fluttered shut, lips parting, not from surprise but surrender. We stood there, close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. Then, somewhere in the hallway, a door slammed, footsteps echoing toward us. She froze. I turned toward the sound. And right before the door opened, she whispered, If he sees us like this, everything changes. The handle turned. And neither of us moved. You said, it wasn't her husband who opened the door. It was our instructor. He stepped in, blinking under the dim studio light, eyes flicking between us, her hair damp, my hand still hovering near her face. The moment hung there, alive and guilty. Sorry, he stammered, setting down a stack of portfolios. Didn't realize anyone was still here. Elena pulled away instantly. We were just cleaning up. Sure, he said, though the word carried weight, the kind that didn't believe. He left after a few awkward seconds, but that was all it took. The air between us collapsed into something jagged and unsteady. She grabbed her bag, hands shaking. It's over, she said. Whatever this was. Elena, no, she said louder this time. We crossed the line. I crossed it. You still have time to step back. And then she was gone, rain following her out the door like a curtain dropping on a scene that ended too soon. I didn't hear from her for a week. No messages, no classes. Just absence. And silence, which somehow said too much. Until one evening, a message arrived on my phone, a simple one. Can we talk? Not at the studio. I went without thinking. She was waiting at a cafe tucked behind the old library, her coat buttoned to the collar, hair pulled back. She looked resolved. The kind of calm that comes after too many nights of crying. I told them I'm leaving, she said. Leaving? The program. The city. My chest tightened. Because of me? Her eyes flicked up, soft, pained. Because of what this could become. She hesitated, then slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a job offer, a teaching position in another city. She'd signed it already. You could have told me, I said quietly. I didn't want you to talk me out of it. The words hit harder than I expected. You think I'd stop you from doing what's right? No, she said. I think you'd remind me what I really want. And I can't afford that right now. We sat there in silence, 2 cups of untouched coffee cooling between us. Outside, the streetlight flickered, painting her face in brief pulses of gold. Then she added, almost in a whisper, He saw us. I froze. Who? My ex-husband. That night in the parking lot. The ground shifted beneath me. He didn't say anything, she continued, voice trembling. But he knows. He sent me a message, said he'd tell the school if I didn't meet him. You're protecting him, I said, disbelief in my throat. I'm protecting you, she corrected softly. You still have a future here. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine once, that same touch that always felt like both beginning and ending. Don't come to the station, she said. Please. Then she stood, leaving her coffee untouched and her scent lingering like the ghost of a choice she'd already made. That night, I went home and tore the sketch of her reflection in half, but I couldn't throw it away. Because deep down, I knew she hadn't really left to save herself. She'd left to save us. I found her at the train station. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I'd respect what she wanted, but love doesn't listen to good intentions. It just pulls. She stood by platform 4, suitcase beside her, scarf loose around her neck. The wind from an arriving train caught her hair, lifting it just enough for me to see her face, calm, composed, but with eyes that told a different story. She saw me before I could speak. And for a moment neither of us moved. Just the hum of the station around us, the sound of strangers saying goodbye too easily. Elena, I said, breathless. Don't go like this. She closed her eyes, like the sound of her name hurt. You shouldn't be here. I know. I stepped closer. But you are. Her jaw tightened. You think this is brave? It's not. It's reckless. Then let it be reckless, I said. For once, let something be. She laughed, soft, broken. You talk like someone who hasn't lived long enough to see what love can destroy. I've seen what it destroys when it's denied. That silenced her. For the first time, she didn't have a wall to hide behind. She turned away, eyes glistening under the harsh station lights. You don't understand, she whispered. He's not just angry, he's vindictive. If he tells the school, then let him. I interrupted. Let him talk, let him burn it down. I'll start over. I just don't want to start over without you. Her hand trembled on the handle of her suitcase. You'll regret this. I already regret not saying something sooner. The announcement crackled overhead. Her train was boarding. She turned to face me fully, and there it was again, the conflict in her eyes, the longing she tried to starve. She reached up, touched my face, tentative at first, then firmer, her thumb brushing the corner of my mouth. You have no idea what you've done to me, she said softly. I stopped believing someone could see me like this. Then don't walk away from it. Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but all that came out was a breath, shaky, desperate, full of everything words couldn't hold. The train whistle screamed, pulling her back to reality. She dropped her hand, stepped away. If I stay, it ruins us both. I shook my head. If you go, it ruins me anyway. For a moment I thought she'd turn, that maybe the story would bend toward us instead of against us. But she didn't. She lifted her suitcase, eyes wet now. And then, just as she turned to board, she paused. Look back. Her voice was barely a whisper. Don't forget me in your paintings. I took a step forward. I couldn't if I tried. She smiled, small, trembling, final. And then she was gone. The doors closed. The train pulled away. But through the glass, I saw her hand pressed against the window, brief, unsteady, like a promise she couldn't keep but couldn't let go of either. And I knew, right then, that love didn't always end with staying. Sometimes it ended with understanding. It's been 6 months. The studio feels different now, quieter, but not empty. There's new light in it, somehow softer. I still take the same seat by the window, the one where she used to stand. The one that still smells faintly of turpentine and jasmine whenever I unlock that memory too fast. I don't draw her anymore. Not directly, at least. But she's in everything, the way I paint light, the curve of a shoulder, the pause between brushstrokes. Even when I sketch faceless strangers, something about them always ends up looking like her. People tell me my art's changed. That it feels more alive. I never tell them why. A few weeks after she left, I got a letter, no return address, just her handwriting. The kind that looked steady at first but trailed off like a sigh. She didn't say much. Just that she'd started teaching again, in a smaller town by the coast. That the mornings there were quieter, and that she finally had the courage to paint something for herself again. And at the end, you once said you couldn't throw the sketch away. I hope you never do. But don't let it hold you either. Keep painting. Even the pain. No promises. No declarations. Just a gentle permission to move forward. I read it more times than I should have. Then one day, I stopped, not because it hurt less, but because I didn't need the words to remember her anymore. Sometimes I still catch myself looking up when the door opens, expecting her to walk in, hair pinned loose, eyes half-tired but bright. I imagine what she'd say if she saw how far I've come, how the studio walls are lined with pieces that carry bits of her presence. Maybe she'd smile. Maybe she'd say, "You finally learned how to stop cleaning the brushes for other people." Maybe she'd laugh at how I still hesitate before painting hands, because hers were the only ones I ever got right. Last night, I stood by the same window where she used to paint. The city lights reflected on the glass, blurring into streaks of gold. For a second, it looked like she was there again, her silhouette against the fading day. I didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stood there until the vision melted into nothing but my own reflection, older now, steadier, a little lonelier. And yet, not empty. Because she never really left. She just changed form, from a person into a feeling. From a secret into a story. Love didn't end where I thought it would. It didn't burn out or fade away. It just softened, into something I could live with, something that taught me how to see. And sometimes that's enough.